What is up, my boys? So, what can we do? Yeah, I figured since we're going to do Genesis, why don't I do a quick overview of Genesis 1 through 11? How about it? Maybe 3 minutes? We'll see. So, Genesis 1 and 2, we have kind of two creation accounts. Now, I've already went over this with you guys. This isn't like scientifically how God made the world or creation, heaven and earth. Nope. It's just an account, and a narrative account of it. Basically, God is bringing order to disorder, okay? And he fills up different spaces, let's say the heavens or the skies, the land, and then the sea, right? So he fills up the skies with birds, seas with fish and sea monsters, the land with vegetation, and then the pinnacle of creation are the humans, right? The humans are supposed to rule and serve creation, right? And they're made in the image of God. So it is through these viceroys or representatives that God is going to rule over the earth and serve it. And the humans are supposed to do that. And since they are doing that, they have to partner with God in order to do this. So are they going to, they're given a choice basically. Are they going to do this in their own wisdom or in godly wisdom, right? So there we have their choice in the tree. They are deceived by the serpent, right? Who is representing these evil forces, these spiritual beings, or a spiritual being that has rebelled against God in some way. And we kind of find that out later, right? So this creature deceives the humans, and it's kind of in opposition to the humans from then on, right? So we have a judgment in Genesis 3 that there's going to be someone from the human, a seed from the human that's going to crush the serpent at some point. But the human is going to be injured, right? A bit at the heel, if you will. So this is part of the story. We're supposed to follow this thread later on, so we get pieces of it over time. So we get more of these spiritual beings in chapter 6-ish with the sons of God. So yeah, a whole bunch of different stuff. And there are other things outside of the canon that talk about these things. So you got to look that up, right? So that's chapter 3. 4, we have the Cain and Abel. Again, Cain chooses his own wisdom, can't control his anger, right? And fails the test again, just like his parents did. We have chapter 5. What was chapter 5? Let's go over it real quick. The 5 is, basically the genealogy from Adam to Noah. That's why genealogies are important. The rest of the Bible, you'll see them in the Gospels. You'll see them in Chronicles. It has to be traced back to Adam, and basically you're trying to find that seed of the woman. That's why genealogies is so important, right? Then you have the account of Noah and this kind of new creation. It's a recreation of the world. So the world is, we see in 6 that the sons of God bring violence on the earth. Human wisdom causes more and more trouble and problems. right? And these spiritual beings are affecting it somehow, these godlike creatures that are a mix of men and spiritual beings. So this is where you get all this like spiritual warfare and other different things. But these systems are infected with these spiritual beings, with the serpent. And something to follow throughout the Bible. That's why you have the serpent and the dragon and its beasts in Revelation. You see all these different spiritual beings in Daniel and other things throughout the Bible. And you have that recreation with the flood. So a wiping out, a chaos. So the waters are kind of controlled, and then they are brought about again to wipe out the land or cleanse the land even. And then God brings order again. We see that there is a little floating ark, which is kind of like the land that preserves the humans, right? It lands back on the land after a certain number of days, 7 days after the birds were sent out. Interesting enough, right? So there's this new creation, a recreation, and then a repopulation of the earth, right? Where all the nations go out from Noah and they are able to multiply. And multiplication is something humans are supposed to do from Genesis 1, right? So you have this multiplication, and the nations go out, and then there's a covenant again. And then Noah fails, right? He makes his vineyard, he gets drunk off the wine. Anyway, and yeah, there's the nations. The nations come together. There's unity again in Babel or Babylon, right? Picture again of Babylon and Babel. And that was back in, or you can see that also in Revelation with the beasts and Babylon, right? So basically these nations reject Yahweh. They reject God, right? Because it was always a weird thing with Babel, right? It's like, hold on, they have technology, they're doing well, they have unity. Isn't that something Jesus wants and prays for? And it is, but it is not godly wisdom. It is, again, human wisdom. They have one language, they're able to have that unity, but they're making a name for themselves and they're not glorifying God, basically, right? So God scatters them. A basic thing that God does, like exile. What God does, like in Eden, he exiled the humans out of the heaven and earth creation. They're kicked out. Also, at the end of Deuteronomy, God scatters Israel when they don't. Basically, Moses says, he'll after they experience the curses at the end of Deuteronomy, God says that he will scatter his people when they don't follow him, but then he'll draw them all together again through this prophet, which ends up being Jesus, right? So basically the nations reject God at Babel, so God scatters them, and then he calls in chapter 12 a new nation, a holy nation, a priesthood of his own. Again, what the calling of humans which always has been. They're supposed to be a peculiar people. They're supposed to spread that blessing out. And so he starts again with this old guy who can't have kids and makes a covenant with Abraham, we find later on, right? So that's his nation. That's Israel. So that's the start. So basically what we can see in Genesis 1 through 11 is the outline or the beginning of the whole story. And so you have to really get that story. And Bible Project likes to say there's a lot of patterns there. And it's basically that pattern repeated over and over again, just in different ways throughout the Hebrew Bible. So there is a calling of the people, a rejection of God, and then like a new creation after the people go through things. Anyway, that doesn't make sense, but that's a mix of the Exodus. About 11 minutes. So, yep, that's what I got. Genesis 1 through 11. Obviously, can go through tons more detail. But that's a decent overview. Love you, boys.